On today's show, part 2 of the wheel shootout, review of Formula 2009 and Gran Turismo for the PSP, and Top Sim Cars, sponsored by SimRaceway.com. Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm your host, Jessica Lopez. We have an action-packed show for you today. We have 2 new titles to add to our top simulation cars.
We do?
See, I'm all confused because you're playing and I can't hear what I'm doing.
Okay,
Thank you for stopping. This is Darren Ganji, by the way.
I know.
Welcome to the show.
I gotta stop playing. Let me put
He's
this
playing
down.
the PSP. We have 2 new titles to add to our weighted rating scale, both for the PSP.
Yeah.
One of which he was playing is the Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
The other is F1 2009 by Codemasters.
Got a lot of playtime with that Gran Turismo on the plane.
You sure
our,
did.
Trip to Boston. So I got to get quite a bit through the challenges and a lot of fun. Hard to put down, man. It was a great time burner, which is what I call it in my piece.
And we also have our top sim cars. We have 2 cars that we're adding to the list.
Yeah.
One is from GT Legends, the first from GT Legends on our top sim cars list.
A lot of requests for a GT Legends car, and man, that thing is a beast.
It's a Di Tommaso Pantera.
Yeah, that thing is tough to drive. And second is the Megane Trophy car from R Factor, for R Factor, mod by the Racing Sim Developers Group.
Sim Developers Group.
And very cool mod, so we're going to have that
the
one.
first that you drove in a league, right?
First I drove in an R Factor league, yeah. So cool to have that car on the show.
So let's go ahead and take you into our top sim car segment. This segment is sponsored by SimRaceway.com, home of the one-click install.
All right, here we are for number ocho.
The 8th installment.
Big 8. Yeah, can you believe we did it, Benny? I said that
No.
a couple episodes ago. Right?
And we're still going, and we got a lot more cars to add. We're only on the 18th and 19th cars.
Yep. Oh, yeah, there's tons to go. Matter of fact, I knew what I wanted to mention. I forgot to write it down here. There's a list brewing at our forum.
Sure.
Go to InsideSimRacing.tv and click on forums. And just join if you're a member. You can even look at it if you're not a member. But we have a top simulation cars thread. And there's a list going where people have, put their suggestions in, and I've created, I think I have over 20 cars from that list.
Yeah, and we're picking from that list.
Speaking of which, next car, or one of the next cars from that list is going to be the Historics. The one I picked from that list is the Historics Ford Capri for R Factor / GT Legends. That car is badass. I drove it today. That's a fun little car.
Yeah, you were getting a little ahead of ourselves today driving it, but
speaking ahead of ourselves, let's back up here.
And like we said, we're picking from that list, and we want the community, so definitely picking from there.
Yep. So join in and add to that list, and there's a list going at SimRaceway.com too. As a matter of fact, there's a list that they're putting together a car that they're going to pick, but that's a different list. So anyway, 2 cars, Megane Trophy, like we mentioned, and the Di Tommaso Pantera
For GTL.
Yep. So why don't we just get right to it?
All right, we got the trusty clock going, 1.5 minutes, and we're on.
So the Megane Trophy by RSDG, or Racing Sim Developers Group. You can go to rsdg.net if you want to check them out directly.
And we one-click installed this from simraceway.com, so you can find it there. And this is your first exposure to R Factor, driving the Megane.
Yep, racing in that series that Frosty put together. Yeah, it was a great car, great close racing.
Maybe one of the best cars for big groups of guys to bang it out and not have a lot of severe accident damage. So it really encourages the banging it out.
Yep, definitely encourages great close racing. So to me, the car seems a little too grippy though.
Right.
Overall, which probably makes for a reason why that racing is so great. But yeah, wide open into turn 1. We usually test at Eastern Creek, and it just seemed like it was a little too grippy into that corner.
Yeah, it definitely, it's a wide car, wide tires. You'd expect some grip, but there's something a little too grippy about it. I mean, we gave it a 16.5 in physics because overall the physics were still pretty good.
Yep, they were.
But the grip was a little questionable.
And I like the suspension bounce, so yeah, the physics were pretty good. Force feedback felt really good. Force feedback, what did we give, speaking of which?
In force feedback, it actually scored an 8.
Okay, so that
I'm sorry,
was
7.75.
So which was pretty good. Good close racing, rear-wheel drive car. There's an endurance version of this car as well. The
A lot of
model's
paint
pretty good.
schemes, too.
Yep.
That's something, you know, when we were talking about league racing environment.
Oh.
Tons of, anyway,
Out of
all right,
time.
well, I'll finish my point and we'll give a final score, but lots of paint schemes, and that means it's just absolutely perfect for league racing. And anyway, overall, it got a score of 80.8. And where does that put it on the overall list?
That put it, I think, like 12th.
Ooh, not as good as we'd expect for the Megane. Notice we've said the name correctly all evening. We've gone out of our way to research that and
If
be
that's
on top
correct.
of it.
Not 14th overall, actually, out of 19. 80.8 puts it 14th overall. So not bad, but not bad.
No,
actually.
not bad. Not
You know,
bad.
an 80, it's a cool car to race, like we said.
It
Next
is.
up,
Great starter car, too.
yep, great. It was a great starter car for me in R Factor, that's for sure. Next up, Pantera
Okay.
Di Tommaso.
And like I said earlier, you know, this is the American exotic from the mid-70s, early 70s.
We get the timer going?
We're going to get the timer going right here.
Let's get the timer going.
I'm not
minute and
even a
half.
big Ford fan. I know I'm going to get a lot of criticism for saying that. I'm a Chevy guy. But the Pantera was something different. It ran that 351 Cleveland that, you know, all the Mustangs had. And
Yeah, I'm not even sure Ford really manufactured that car. I think it just had that Cleveland,
I think that's the
built
case.
Cleveland engine in it. And I think it was manufactured by maybe Di Tommaso. I don't know. We don't know the history of the car exactly, but we do know it's from Simbin,
Yeah.
GT Legends. And you know what? I do want to say something.
Huh.
We mentioned historics at the top of this, the Ford Capri. I just happened to test out that Pantera.
The other Pantera?
In the R Factor version. I think we're going to rescore this car
Based on that version?
for R Factor later on. We'll call it the R Factor slash GTL car. And it's going to score a little bit higher.
It just might. And I think that there's one area it won't change a lot in, and that's models. And it scored a
man.
9 and a
Badass
quarter out
model.
of 10. One thing,
Cockpits are amazing.
they are. And the thing that I loved is there are two varieties of the Pantera. One that had the traditional like K&N air filter, and then the other one that had like the independent velocity stacks going into the carburetor. Very exotic right there. I'll use that word again.
Yep, very exotic. Cool sounds.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I like the historics a little bit better, but great sounds anyway in the Legends version.
A fun car.
Grody V8.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and-
it is a fun factor for me, actually. I'm going to be honest. That thing is a friggin' beast. That thing
It
is
is.
really tough to tame in Legends, in GT Legends.
Yeah, we actually varied in fun factor. I gave it an 8.5. You and the 7.5. So that gave it a
Overall?
Overall scored a
83.8.
83.8.
That one's 12th on the list, which isn't bad, right? Almost middle of the list, little below the 50% line, but goes right below the Subaru from Richard Burns Rally. I'd like to thank Flying Finn GT for recommending that car, recommended it on that list we just mentioned earlier.
The other thing, we're seeing these cars coming in the middle. I mean, we've been a little critical about what cars even make the list. It's a tough list to make now. So, I mean, even taking 10th, 12th, 14th on that list is, I mean, when you think of the hundreds of cars available, that's a very high ranking.
Yeah,
for
and
these
we are
guys.
being picky. There was a few cars on that list that I saw today that either we've already put on the list or just weren't worthy of being on the list. No offense to some of the people that posted, if you don't see your car make it, no offense.
We got a lot to choose from.
We
though.
just don't want to offend you with the score. It might not
Yeah.
score well enough to really be a top simulation car of all
Sure.
time. Sponsored by simraceway.com, home of the one-click install. I'd like to thank them for sponsoring this segment, and that's going to do it. Next up, we mentioned the Ford
Another
Escort.
Ford. Yeah.
It's the Ford Escort.
Oh, not the Capri. The
Not the
Escort,
Capri.
but another Ford power plant.
Yep, from R Factor Historics, which is GT Legends, port, and conversion. They've converted and changed a lot of things, and it's a really cool
Well,
conversion.
everything mixed into that one.
So that's going to do it for this segment. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you guys for continuing to watch. Now we're going to put Gran Turismo through the weighted rating scale, which is a game that's known, for its graphics. But on the PSP, how did it hold up?
Graphically, it held up great. I was really surprised at how nicely done how everything looked. It was just really, really deep.
Putting this title and the Formula One, which Sean is going to do, onto our weighted rating scale kind of concerned me because I know that there's no force feedback with the PSP. So what did you guys do in that sense when you scored it?
That's a great question. We decided to switch out force feedback for controls, because that's a 10-point category. A 10-point hit would have just buried these titles on our scale. So we exchanged force feedback for, like I said, controls and how if you can, you know, map different things and how it felt to control the car.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, let's go ahead and get on over to your scores.
Sounds good.
Gran Turismo made for a great time burner. On a plane or waiting for an appointment, it helped pass some time. So let's go over the scores. In regards to the physics, I scored it 11.5. The cars all handled the way I felt they should, even though it was with buttons and a D-pad and not a force feedback wheel, it still felt how I had imagined. For the PSP, graphically this title packed a big punch and I scored it an 8. Cars and tracks both received a 9 out of 10. The sound effects are very well done and so are the controls. You are able to configure the buttons any way you like. Considering you can only drive with the D-pad or the slider thingy, the cars react realistically to it. 7.5 for controls. You can drive from multiple views. I found that being outside the car was much easier since the screen is so small. The cockpit view was a little too restrictive. The career mode is great for those time-burning moments. Some of them were so difficult, it was tough to score a bronze medal on them. I mentioned in my initial look at this title that the career mode only went to the letter I, and it definitely goes on further than that. As soon as you get past that license level, you can advance to a whole new block of challenges. Lastly, if this title had damage, it would have scored higher overall on our weighted rating scale. Considering it was on the PSP, it did do well. With a score of 75.5, Gran Turismo held up fairly well considering it had no damage and was being run on the PSP. I highly recommend this title for any PSP owner that's a fan of the GT series or racing games in general. I'd also go as far as saying that this is the best title on the PSP to date.
So Darren scored an overall 75.5 for the Gran Turismo game. And welcome to the show, Sean, Mr. Cole.
Thank you very much.
And Sean's going to be putting our other title on the PSP through the weighted rating scale today, F1 2009 by Codemasters.
I'm pretty excited about this, even though it's a PSP little handheld game.
And I actually mentioned to Darren that putting it through the weighted rating scale, there's no force feedback. So how does that affect the way that you score it?
Yeah, well, like Darren said, we traded out the controls, and I think that made it fair, but it really points out that you're just playing with a little handheld device. I mean, I remember years and years ago just playing, little football games with a handheld thing, little line graphics, but they've come so far along, and but it is going on our weighted rating scale.
It is, up against all of the other titles on there.
Yeah, some big name, physics companies that are doing it, so we'll see how it sizes up. F1 2009 delivers all that you would expect from the 2009 season of Formula One. All of the tracks of the 2009 season are included, giving you 17 different circuits from all over the world to choose from. This even includes the new Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and night racing at Singapore. The game also has every driver and car from the 2009 season. This means that you could race as Lewis Hamilton in his McLaren or the Red Bull car of Sebastian Vettel. Taking the driving experience to the full levels, the sim also includes pit stops, rain, night driving, pit radio, and the new kinetic energy recovery system, KERS, the new green boost system for Formula One. The game includes single race weekend mode, career mode, challenge mode, as well as multiplayer. In the race weekend mode, you will practice, qualify, and race against the best of the best in Formula One. Moving on to career mode, you will have to prove yourselves by testing your way into a ride. Do well and take a top spot for the season. Do poorly and you will have to race your way into better rides during the season from a lesser car. Challenge mode lets you test your skills in different scenarios. That's a lot to put into the PSP, but the real question is, how is the game playing? When driving F1 2009, you will find that the controls are usable, but also lacking in the detail of the steering wheel. Pressing the button quickly is the only way to have variable steering or pedal work. Driving an F1 car takes a great amount of finesse, and these controls are not made for that. The physics are also very gamey. The cars have an unrealistic amount of grip, even with all the driving aids turned off. The cars wander around a bit and can be slid sideways with counter steering. Great effects for a street car, but not very Formula One. The car modeling is of average quality. There's a certain boxiness to the cars, however, they are unmistakably Formula One cars. Meanwhile, the tracks are very well done. To anyone who has driven versions of these tracks before, they'll be very happy with the F1 2009 tracks. The quantity and quality of the tracks is one of the better aspects of F1 2009. So for the most part, F1 2009 misses the mark for me, and it might even sound like I wasn't impressed with the title. There are many areas that F1 2009 came through. The sounds from the game are very good. It is actually amazing that they packed this much sound into a little PSP. Also, the graphics are very good. Again, considering that this is being done on a little PSP, I'm blown away. The cars are clear, the tracks are wonderful, and this is all done on a 4-inch screen. There was an occasional glitch or drop in frames, but mostly it played clear. The other nice thing about F1 2009 is the damage. You can actually demolish your car in this game, and that definitely adds to the quality of the sim. So at the end of the day, what we have here is a very fine driving game. A very good driving game for the PSP. And despite giving it only a 68, I would highly recommend it to someone about to take a long trip and looking for some truly portable sim racing.
So there you got 2 more titles added to our weighted rating scale list, both for the PSP, and all those scores and all previous titles on the list are available at our website
At www.insidesimracing.tv.
That's correct. And on to the guts of the show. Why do you keep laughing?
I don't know. I've just been waiting. You know, this wheel shootout's been fun. So
On to the guts of the
psyched.
show. We have part 2 of our wheel shootout. For those of you that don't know, we have 5 wheels here that we put through their paces.
Yeah, we did. Last time, you know, we did road, oval, rally racing. We raced the wheels head to head. We came up with a certain score there, but that only
Based on your lap times.
Exactly. But
The guys raced, yeah, that only tells a minimal part of the story.
Exactly.
This time the guys put all 5 wheels through our weighted rating scale.
Specially made for force feedback wheels.
Yeah, and you know what? It was the first time we've actually put the wheels on our weighted rating scale. So let's go ahead and tell you guys the categories we used.
All right, we got force feedback at 20, the wheel and rim, like the quality of the actual wheel and rim at 15, buttons, mounting, compatibility, and paddles all at 10 points.
And we have cost, construction, plug and play, looks, and extras all available for 5 points each, bringing the grand total to 100 points available on each wheel.
And you can see the balancer, the weighted part with 20 points for force feedback and 5 for, say, extras. And, you know, we also have this incredible equipment here that we did all of the testing on.
All the testing was done on the Vision Racer VR3 and these beautiful pedals here, Club Sport.
Yeah, Club Sport pedals with the ruby red finish. And we used this equipment all testing. And the reason for that mainly was so that we could jump in and out and try each 5 wheel and not have to think about the seat, the position, or the pedals themselves. That way, your hands could do all the work and they could feel how the force feedback felt and how quick the wheel turned and the finish and all that. And it made it easy to really focus on the wheels.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get on over to our weighted rating scale list for these wheels. And this segment is sponsored by simraceway.com.
Coming in 5th place from Thrustmaster, the Ferrari F430, with an average score of 15.3 in force feedback, 12.2 in wheel rim, and an overall of 75.5. It had top honors in mounting with an 8.5 out of 10. Coming in 4th place from Logitech, the DFGT, with an overall force feedback score of 15.8, wheel rim 11.7, mounting 7.5, and a low point of 3.5 for extras. The DFGT had a 76.3 overall, but took top honors in cost with a 5 out of 5. And a tie for 2nd place from Fanatic, the Porsche 911 GT3 RS, with an overall force feedback score of 16.3. The GT3 RS scored an overall of 80.5. Top honors include wheel rim with a 13.7 out of 15 and looks with a 4.67 out of 5. And tying for 2nd from Logitech, the G27 with a 16.7 in overall force feedback, 12.7 in wheel rim, 9.5 for paddle shifters. The Logitech G27 also scored an overall of 80.5, which makes our #1 ranked wheel from Fanatic, the Porsche 911 Turbo S. With an overall force feedback score of 15.8, the Turbo S really excelled in compatibility and plug-and-play ability. Its overall score was an 82.2. It took top honors in compatibility, plug and play, and extras.
So there you have it, all 5 wheels put through our weighted rating scale.
Sure, with a clear-cut winner, the Turbo 911 Turbo S.
That's right.
You know, its compatibility, I think, is one of the things that really put it over the top. It's the only wheel that just could do anything, anytime. And then you got the GT3 RS and the G27, you know, right behind.
Right behind. And it's interesting that the Porsche 911 Turbo S scored the highest on the weighted rating scale, but I did interview each driver individually, and that was not the wheel that was the most favorite amongst you guys.
You broke it out of us. You did the big interrogation, and 83.5, you think it'd be the one I take home, but you broke us all down.
So I interviewed each 3 of the guys, and let me go ahead and show you guys out there the interviews. All right, so in the wheel shootout, Darren, you scored the fastest with the G27 wheel.
I did.
And you scored on the highest with this
In the
911 Turbo
weighted
S.
rating scale, right?
Yeah, this was scored the highest, and this actually seems to be one of the highest wheels scored, you know, with all 3 guys that were participating in the wheel shootout.
Yep.
But if you had to pick one wheel out of all 5, which
would it
wheel
be?
would you pick as your favorite wheel?
Probably the GT3 RS. It's the one I've been racing with the most. Most comfortable with. I love the feel of it. It feels most like a real car to me. Of the 5, great solid force feedback. Lots of extras on the, you know, as far as the buttons go and stuff like that.
Now,
Definitely my favorite.
your favorite wheel and the 911 are, you know, very similar in terms of size, and, you know, they're pretty similar to each other. Why not the 911?
And I even scored this one higher. I just like that Alcantara leather.
The feel.
Just a little bit better. And it's got a different grip, so the grip's a little bit bigger. It's just definitely my preference. Even though it'd be hard to not have this one as my favorite, because you can run on the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the PC. And they perform similar, and like you said, they're the similar size. So it's really tough. And then I also love the G27. I was the fastest by a good margin on this wheel, so it's tough for me not to say that I would want this. It's really, they're all great wheels. You know, the F430 I was the slowest on. It's a great wheel. It's suffering in its degrees of rotation. The other one, all the other 4 have 900. All 4 of these have 900 degrees of rotation, which definitely make a big difference.
So which would you say is your least favorite wheel of all?
Probably the F430, the Thrustmaster, because of that rotation. If it would have had more, I got a feeling that wheel would have been up. It was the slowest for me. It was hard for me to get used to.
And they're all very great wheels, as you said. I guess
They
it
are.
just boils down to personal preference.
Sean's was second fastest with that F430 wheel, so it's just how quickly we got comfortable with all 4. You can't go wrong with any of these 5 wheels. I would like to say that. You know, they're all great, depending on your budget and, you know, what type
Personal
of wheel you
preference,
want. Yeah, exactly.
And what type of racing you're doing.
Yep, exactly.
Obviously,
That makes a
we've
difference
seen
too.
differences in all, 3 different categories of racing.
And
with
all 3 of
5
us,
certified wheels,
all 3
yeah.
of us like different wheels as our preferred wheel for the most part. Well, I think Terry and I were pretty
But
similar.
overall, your favorite wheel?
GT3 RS.
There you have it. I'm here with Sean. Welcome. And on the weighted rating scale, Sean scored the 911 Turbo S as the highest wheel in his ratings.
I sure did.
And is this your most favorite wheel? If you have to choose one wheel over all these 5 that will be the one that you get to take home, which wheel would you choose?
I would choose this wheel right here, the G27.
Okay, so if you scored this the highest, why was this your favorite wheel, just out of curiosity?
That's a good question. I think this is what made this so difficult. This wheel is the wheel that I felt the most comfortable on, the quickest. I plugged it in, drove a sim, and I was fast in every sim I tried every time. It's the wheel that I had the most confidence in, and it had some of the features I like. However, this wheel here, actually, when it comes to we've been driving Forza with some production cars, and a lot of the games, depending on, sometimes we're driving more for fun than racing, and this wheel feels more realistic, more like the actual wheel in my car than any of the other wheels. So it's really hard for me to not say this isn't my favorite, because there are aspects about this, like, Darren and I race, sometimes we use the stick shift, the clutch, and we want it to be realistic, and we're not looking to beat Gregor Hutu on the track at those moments. This wheel is much more fun for that type of moment. This wheel, on the other hand, if I'm looking just to race, the bottom line is it comes down to lap times. I was faster actually in the DFGT, but this wheel is sort of overall, not just in rally racing, I'm confident in.
Well, that's okay. You can have more than one winner, so you have two wheels that
Yeah,
you
I'll take them both.
choose as your favorite. What wheel would you say is your least favorite?
My least favorite wheel actually was the Thrustmaster Ferrari wheel, which is odd. It was the second fastest wheel for me in the rally racing, and I think a lot of it was its limited degree rotation was a benefit for me, needing to go full lock to full lock, controlling that car off-road, and maybe full lock to full lock's not how you're supposed to rally, but that's how I rally.
Well, once again, I guess it depends on the type of racing that you're doing and the kind of car that you're driving.
And to give you an idea, my brother actually ran the Ferrari wheel, and I tried to get him to test other wheels, and he wouldn't. He was very comfortable with it. So, again, that makes that same point that any wheel given to the right person, they're going to be happy with it.
All right, when you're testing these wheels, what is it that you're looking for in the wheel that helps you base your decision on what's the best wheel and which wheel's your least favorite?
I think that's a great question. For me, it's overall, it's not the construction, that's a 5-point category, but it's the overall construction, including the wheel. Like, just that, how it feels in my hand, how it looks, just does it look real versus like a toy? And I think for that, even the speed, how quickly it moves. For me, I think that's, again, why the Logitech wheels did really well, is they turn really quick for me. So.
All right, well, there you have it. Sean's favorite, the Logitech G27. I'd like to introduce and welcome a good friend of the show, Terry Allen. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Jessica. I had a good time being here.
And thank you for being part of our wheel shootout. We tested all 5 wheels, or you did actually, with the guys. And on the weighted rating scale, the G27 is the one that you scored the highest.
That's true. I did. I actually ran better times with the GT3 RS, but it was a very good wheel, and it was a real hard decision to make.
And as far as your overall favorite, I mean, besides the weighted rating scale and besides what was the best for you in your oval racing, out of all 5 wheels, which wheel would you pick as your ultimate favorite?
Well, like I said, it was a really hard decision. The G27 is a beautiful wheel. I love the way it feels. It's got great controls. I actually chose the GT3 RS, though. Overall, I think it had the most realistic feel of all the wheels I held. I mean, it felt like a real steering wheel out of a race car. The buttons were a little plasticky, but overall, I mean, the controls, these wheels are real precise, just like the Turbo S right next to it. And I felt real consistent with it.
And out of all 5 wheels, if you had to say one was your least favorite, which wheel would that be?
It would be the F430, the Thrustmaster. Still a great wheel in its own right. In fact, I think the buttons that on the wheel are the best of all of them, as far as I was concerned. But a little bit notchy in controls, maybe not as precise. That's, like I said, compared to the German wheels, the Fanatic wheels. The DFGT was actually my wheel for a long time I raced with, in which I gave the second to last place. Still a great wheel. I mean, it just proves that all these wheels up here were winners, as far as I was concerned.
Right. So overall, I mean, each wheel is good in its own individual way.
Yeah, they all have great attributes.
But you do choose the GT3 as your most favorite, and then the G27 sounds like is your second favorite.
Yeah, I'd say it was a real close decision. I couldn't go wrong either way, I guess, with that one.
Right. And doing all the testing, what are the features that you look for in the wheel to determine which one is better? Is it just the buttons or the feel? It's
a combination of everything. I mean, shifters, buttons, the way the wrap of the wheel itself is. I actually, the Porsche wheel, like I said, is a little bit bigger. It felt a little more comfortable for me. I mean, it's a more overall racing wheel, whereas, I mean, the G27 can be a great wheel, especially for like a Formula One style racing or something. So, and like I said, the 911 Turbo, I mean, you can use it on a, Xbox 360. I don't actually own one, but I mean, that's a great thing if you were to in the future buy something like that. So, like I said, I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of the wheels up here. But
all right.
The winner for me would be the GT3 RS.
There you have it, GT3 RS for Terry. So there you guys have it. Part 2 of our wheel shootout now concluded with 5 contestants.
5 winners. Well,
that's right.
Sort of winners. I don't know. Winners, losers. They all did well in their own ways, and I think it really comes down to, do you want to drive a Porsche or a Ferrari or a generic wheel, which actually was mine. Well, generic wheel. It's not a generic wheel. A non-branded wheel, very, very good wheel, the G27, my pick.
So yeah, it does come down to personal preference and maybe, your budget or what type of, racing you're going to be doing.
Definitely.
So there's not one particular grand winner, so sorry to the viewers out there who were just looking for us to choose one wheel, but they're all great in their own way, like Sean said.
Sure, and thanks to Logitech and Fanatec and Thrustmaster for all participating in this. And we also got to thank our sponsors one more time, the Vision Racer VR3, which all of these wheels mounted up look spectacular on them. And then also we had Fanatec with the Club Sport Ruby Red pedals. Which,
beautiful red pedals.
Yeah, I'll make those mine.
And not to forget, thank you to simraceway.com, home of the one-click install, for sponsoring this whole wheel shootout and making it possible.
Sure.
And on our next episode, we're going to give iRacing a chance on our weighted rating scale.
Yeah, we've been waiting a long time for this one. iRacing, the big sim on the block, we've waited for it to evolve so we could fully do it. We did some interviews when we were in Boston.
We sure did.
And we'll interject those into the review as well.
You interviewed Greg Hill.
Yeah, all about how they make the cars and tracks. And then Darren talked to Dave Kemmer about physics.
So stay tuned for that on our next episode. And don't forget to visit our website, InsideSimRacing.tv, if you'd like to check all of our list for top sim cars.
Sure, we got our forum and, you know, watch the show there.
Of course. And if you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Definitely.
And make sure you comment and rate the show.
Which we get lots of comments. We love them. We try to get back to as many as we can. We get good ones, bad ones. We love them all.
We love them all. That's going to wrap it up. Checkered flag is out, and so are we. And two new cars added to the list. One is from GT Legends.
Our first from GT Legends.
Yes, indeed. The Gran Tomorrow Pantera. Tommaso.
Gran Turismo.
Wait, we have it out right there, right?
Yeah.
I like it.
We do. The Gran Tomato.